The warship drifted like a dead whale in the cold emptiness of space. Its name, UES Defiance, was still visible on the hull despite the burn marks and blast holes that covered its surface. The ship had been floating among the asteroids for 3 months now, dark and silent. Captain Sarah Chen sat slumped over her command chair on the bridge. Her uniform was torn and stained with dried blood. A plasma burn had left a black mark across her chest. Her eyes were closed and she had not moved for weeks. Around her, the bodies of her crew lay at their stations, fallen where they had died defending their ship. The bridge was almost completely dark. Only a few emergency lights still worked, casting red shadows across the silent control panels. Through the main window, Earth was barely visible as a tiny dot in the distance. But even from here, anyone could see that their home planet was dying. The alien ships had burned the atmosphere, and now Earth glowed with an unnatural orange light. The hegemony had won. That much was clear to anyone who looked at the battlefield. Hundreds of human ships floated dead in space around the Kepler system. The aliens had been thorough in their attack. They wanted to make sure that humanity could never fight back again. Lieutenant Commander James Rodriguez lay face down near the weapons station. His hand was still reaching for the firing controls, frozen in his final moment. Next to him, Engineer Lisa Park had died trying to reroute power to the shields. Her tools were scattered on the floor around her body. The aliens called themselves the Hegemony, and they had been conquering planets for thousands of years. They were very good at war. Their ships were bigger and stronger than anything humans had ever built. Their weapons could destroy entire cities with a single shot. Most importantly, they never showed mercy to anyone who fought against them. 3 months ago, the final battle had lasted only 6 hours. The human fleet had fought bravely, but it was not enough. One by one, their ships had been destroyed or disabled. The Defiance had been one of the last to fall, fighting until its weapons went silent and its engines died. The ship's computer had recorded everything. In the final moments, Captain Chen had given the order to ram the nearest hegemony vessel. But the engines had failed before they could complete the attack. The ship had simply stopped, powerless and helpless. After the battle, the hegemony ships had scanned all the human vessels. Their computers marked each one as destroyed or disabled. The Defiance had shown no life signs, no energy readings, nothing to suggest that anyone was still alive inside. So the aliens had moved on, leaving the human ships to float in space like a graveyard. The corridor outside the bridge was filled with more bodies. Marines who had tried to defend against alien boarding parties lay where they had fallen. Some still held their rifles. Others had died fighting with knives and bare hands when their ammunition ran out. The walls were covered with blast marks and dried blood. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Marcus Webb sat against a wall with his eyes closed. He had died trying to restart the reactor after a direct hit had knocked out the main power systems. His hands were still covered in burns from touching the overloaded control panels. Around him, his team had died at their posts, trying to keep the ship running until the very end. The medical bay told its own story of the final battle. Dr. Amanda Hayes had died while operating on a wounded Marine. Her patient had not survived either. The medical beds were full of bodies, both human and alien. Even in the last moments, the doctor had been trying to save lives. Throughout the ship, the same scene repeated itself. Humans who had fought to the end, never giving up even when they knew they could not win. The aliens had paid a high price for their victory. Many hegemony soldiers had died taking the ship, and their bodies were mixed with the human dead. But now it was over. The ship was cold and dark. The life support systems had failed weeks ago. The only sounds were the occasional creaking of metal, as the hull expanded and contracted in the temperature changes of space. Sometimes small pieces of debris would hit the ship with tiny pinging sounds, but otherwise everything was silent. The hegemony had moved on to other systems, spreading their empire further across the galaxy. They had already forgotten about the humans and their small, weak fleet. Earth was being colonized by alien settlers who would strip the planet of its resources. Any humans who had survived the bombardment were being used as slaves. From the outside, the Defiance looked like just another piece of space junk. Its hull was damaged and scorched. Several sections had been blown open to space. The ship's identification codes no longer transmitted. Any scanning equipment would show that it was just a dead hulk with no value. The ship's reactor had gone completely cold. The fusion chambers that had once powered the mighty warship were now empty and silent. The engines that had carried them across the stars would never fire again. Even the emergency batteries had died long ago, leaving only the faintest emergency lighting in a few sections. In the captain's quarters, personal items floated in the zero gravity. Pictures of Earth, letters from home, small mementos that the crew had brought with them on their final mission. These things would never be returned to their families. There was no one left to care about such small treasures. The weapon systems were completely destroyed. The main guns had been melted by alien plasma fire. The missile tubes were empty, their last shots fired in the desperate final minutes of the battle. Even the point defense systems had been torn apart by enemy fire. The ship could not fight anymore, even if someone wanted it to. Yet something was different about this dead ship. Deep in its core, in sections that the aliens had never reached, strange energy patterns flickered occasionally. They were so faint that no normal scanner could detect them. The pattern seemed almost like a heartbeat, slow and steady, as if something was still alive deep inside the vessel. These energy readings were not from any human technology. They were something else, something that had been sleeping inside the ship since it was built. The patterns were connected to quantum fields that existed beyond normal space and time. They responded to things that most species could not understand. The hegemony scanners had missed these readings completely. Their technology was very advanced, but it could only detect things that existed in normal space. They had no idea that some forms of energy could hide in dimensions that their instruments could not reach. So the Defiance continued to drift through the asteroid field, carrying its cargo of dead heroes and its secret that no one knew about. The ship waited in the darkness, patient and still, while the strange energy patterns grew slowly stronger with each passing day. Something was waking up inside the vessel, something that had been waiting for exactly this moment. The aliens thought they had won completely. They believed that humanity was finished forever. But they did not know about the gift that had been hidden in human DNA for millions of years, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. They did not understand that sometimes the greatest weapons are not the ones that destroy, but the ones that transform. In the cold silence of space, the Defiance kept its secrets and waited for someone to come close enough to trigger what was hidden inside. Commander Vexhai stood on the bridge of the hegemony salvage ship Harvester, studying the readings on his scanner. His forearms moved quickly across the control panels as he examined the strange data. The Zentari officer had been salvaging battlefields for 20 years, but he had never seen energy patterns like these before. The readings were coming from one of the dead human ships floating in the asteroid field. According to the battle records, this vessel had been destroyed 3 months ago. The ship showed no life signs and no power emissions, but deep inside its hull, something was generating quantum energy signatures that made no sense. "Sir, should we investigate the human ship?" asked Sub-Commander Krell, his assistant. The younger Zentari was nervous about getting close to the dead vessel. There were stories about human ships having hidden weapons or traps. Vexhai's orange eyes studied the readings more carefully. The energy patterns were very faint, but they were definitely there. His instruments showed quantum fluctuations that should not exist in a dead ship. This could be valuable technology that the hegemony had not seen before. "Prepare a boarding party," Vexhai ordered. "We will investigate this anomaly." The humans had some advanced technology, and their military secrets could be useful to us. The Harvester moved slowly through the asteroid field toward the drifting warship. The human vessel looked exactly like a piece of space junk. Its hull was damaged and burned. Several sections had been blown open to space. There was no sign of any activity inside. The salvage ship pulled alongside the human vessel and extended its docking arms. The mechanical clamps grabbed onto the dead ship's hull with loud metallic sounds. Once the ships were locked together, the boarding team prepared their equipment. Vexhai led a team of 12 Zentari soldiers into the human ship. They wore full armor and carried powerful plasma weapons. Their helmet lights cut through the darkness as they moved through the airlock into the dead vessel. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Even through their air filters, they could detect the scent of old blood and burned metal. The corridors were dark and cold. Frost covered the walls where moisture had frozen in the zero atmosphere. Bodies floated everywhere. Human soldiers had died fighting in these hallways, and their corpses still drifted where they had fallen. The Zentari soldiers pushed the dead humans aside as they moved deeper into the ship. Some of the bodies bumped against the walls with soft sounds. "Look at this," said Sergeant Morka, pointing at blast marks on the walls. The humans fought hard. They did not surrender easily. The boarding team found evidence of fierce battles throughout the ship. Barricades had been built from furniture and equipment. Empty ammunition cases covered the floors. In some places, the humans had fought with knives and tools when their guns ran out of power. As they moved through the ship, the quantum readings grew stronger. HFY checked his scanner repeatedly. The energy source was somewhere near the center of the vessel, probably in the engineering section or the main computer core. "Sir, something is strange about these bodies," reported Private Zeltak. He was examining one of the human corpses with his medical scanner. "They show no signs of decay. It has been 3 months, but they look like they just died." HFY frowned at this information. Bodies should decompose quickly in space, especially without life support systems. But the human corpses looked fresh, as if they had died only hours ago instead of months ago. "Perhaps the cold preserved them," he said. "Continue with the mission." But other soldiers were starting to notice the same thing. The human bodies were too well preserved. Their skin still had color. Their eyes were clear instead of cloudy. Some of them almost looked like they were sleeping instead of dead. The boarding team reached the main corridor that led to the ship's center. Here they found signs of the final battle. Human Marines had made their last stand in this hallway, fighting alien boarding parties to the end. Bodies of both humans and hegemony soldiers lay mixed together. "Our people died here too," observed Krell, looking at the alien corpses. The humans made them pay for every meter. The Zentari soldiers had expected this. Humans were known for their fierce fighting spirit. Even when they knew they could not win, they continued to resist. It was one of the things that made them dangerous enemies. They continued moving toward the source of the quantum readings. The energy patterns were getting much stronger now. HFY's scanner showed complex quantum fields that seemed to pulse like a slow heartbeat. This was definitely not normal human technology. "Could this be some kind of weapon?" asked Krell nervously. "If it was a weapon, it would have activated during the battle," HFY replied. "This is probably just their computer core or some other advanced system. We will examine it and take anything valuable." The boarding team entered the engineering section of the ship. Here they found more bodies, but these were different. The human engineers had died at their posts, but their positions looked almost peaceful. They were sitting or standing at their control panels as if they had simply gone to sleep. One human female was slumped over a computer terminal. Her hand was still touching the keyboard. A male engineer lay on his back near the main reactor, his arms folded across his chest. Their faces were calm, showing no signs of pain or fear. "This is very strange," muttered Sergeant Morka. "These humans do not look like they died in battle." The quantum readings were now so strong that they made the Zentari instruments buzz and flicker. Whatever was generating the energy was very close. HFY led his team deeper into the engineering section, following the scanner readings. They found the source in a chamber they had never seen before. The room was hidden behind what looked like a normal bulkhead, but their scanner showed it was actually a sophisticated door. The quantum energy was coming from inside this secret chamber. "Blow the door," HFY ordered. The Zentari soldiers placed explosive charges on the hidden entrance. The blast echoed through the dead ship as the door was destroyed. Beyond it, they found a room that seemed to glow with its own light. The chamber was filled with strange equipment that none of them recognized. Crystalline structures grew from the walls like living things. Streams of energy flowed between them in patterns that hurt to look at directly. In the center of the room was a pillar of light that seemed to extend beyond the normal dimensions of space. "What is this technology?" whispered Krell. HFY stepped closer to examine the strange equipment. His scanner readings were going wild now. The quantum energy levels were off the scale. This was far beyond anything the hegemony had ever encountered. As soon as he stepped into the chamber, something changed. The energy patterns suddenly became more active. The streams of light began to pulse faster. The crystalline structures started to hum with a sound that seemed to come from inside the soldiers' heads. "Sir, we should leave," urged Sergeant Morka. This could be dangerous. But HFY was fascinated by what he was seeing. This technology could be incredibly valuable to the hegemony. If they could understand how it worked, it might give them new weapons or defenses. He ordered his team to begin scanning and recording everything. As the Zentari soldiers worked in the strange chamber, they did not notice the changes happening throughout the rest of the ship. The human bodies that had seemed so peacefully dead were beginning to stir. Eyes that had been closed for months started to open. Hearts that had stopped beating began to pulse again with a rhythm that matched the quantum energy. The boarding party had triggered something that had been waiting patiently for exactly this moment. Deep in the hidden chamber, ancient technology was waking up, and with it, something that the hegemony had thought was safely dead was coming back to life. Captain Sarah Chen opened her eyes for the first time in 3 months. The burn mark across her chest was still there, but it no longer hurt. She sat up slowly in her command chair and looked around the bridge with eyes that now glowed with a soft blue light. All around her, her crew was doing the same thing. Lieutenant Commander Rodriguez stood up from where he had been lying near the weapons station. Engineer Park picked up her scattered tools and returned to her post. One by one, every human on the bridge came back to life. But they were not the same as they had been before. They moved with perfect coordination, as if they were all part of the same mind. When they spoke, their voices carried strange harmonics that made the air itself vibrate. "The salvage team has arrived," Chen said to her crew. Her voice sounded normal, but there were undertones that seemed to come from somewhere else entirely. "They have activated the proximity sensors." "Yes, Captain," her crew replied in perfect unison. "The awakening has begun." Throughout the ship, the same thing was happening. Every human who had died in the final battle was standing up and returning to their stations. But these were not zombies or ghosts. They were something new, something that had never existed before in the galaxy. In the engineering section, the Zentari boarding party was still examining the strange chamber. Commander Vexhai was recording everything with his scanner, trying to understand the alien technology. His soldiers were nervous, but they followed their orders. Then they heard footsteps in the corridor behind them. "Sir, someone is coming," reported Sergeant Morka. He raised his plasma rifle and aimed it at the doorway. The footsteps were slow and steady, getting closer. The Zentari soldiers prepared for battle, thinking that some humans might have survived in hidden parts of the ship. But when the figures appeared in the doorway, the aliens felt a chill of fear. It was the human crew, the same people whose bodies they had seen lying dead throughout the ship. But now they were standing upright, walking normally, and their eyes glowed with that strange blue light. "Welcome aboard the Defiance," said Captain Chen as she entered the chamber. Behind her came 50 other humans, all moving with the same eerie coordination. "We have been waiting for you." Vexhai raised his weapon, but he was too shocked to fire immediately. "You are dead," he said in his broken human language. "We saw your bodies. You have been dead for months." Chen smiled, and when she did, all 50 humans smiled at exactly the same time. "Dead is not the right word," she replied. "We have been transformed. We have been waiting for someone to come close enough to complete the activation sequence." "That is impossible," Vexhai protested. "Dead means dead. Bodies cannot come back to life." "You are thinking too simply," Chen said. Her voice now carried harmonics that seemed to come from multiple dimensions at once. "Life and death are not as permanent as you believe. There are forms of existence that your people have never imagined." Sergeant Morka fired his plasma rifle at the nearest human. The energy beam passed right through the target without causing any damage. The human did not even flinch. The plasma bolt hit the wall behind him and dissipated harmlessly. "Your weapons cannot hurt us now," Chen explained patiently. "We exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Physical attacks have no effect." The Zentari soldiers tried firing at other humans with the same result. Their most powerful weapons were completely useless. The plasma beams passed through the humans as if they were made of air. "What are you?" Vexhai demanded. His forearms were shaking as he lowered his useless weapon. "We are what humanity was always meant to become," Chen replied. "Your people have triggered something that has been sleeping in our genetic code for millions of years. You have given us the final push we needed to evolve." The quantum energy in the chamber was growing stronger by the moment. The crystalline structures were pulsing with light that seemed to extend beyond normal space. The pillar of energy in the center was becoming brighter and more complex. "This technology is not human," Krell observed, looking around the strange chamber. "These devices are far too advanced for your species." "You are correct," Chen agreed. "This technology belongs to the precursors, an ancient race that transcended physical existence long ago. They knew that the hegemony would eventually threaten all life in the galaxy, so they prepared a gift for those who would come after them." The humans began to move around the chamber, touching the crystalline structures with their hands. Where they made contact, the alien devices became even brighter. Streams of energy began connecting the humans to the machines. The precursors planted seeds in the genetic code of many species throughout the galaxy, Chen continued. But only one species had the right combination of traits to activate the seeds. Only one species was stubborn enough to fight to the end, even when facing complete extinction. Humanity, whispered Vexhai, beginning to understand. Yes, all 50 humans said at once. We were chosen not because we were the strongest or the smartest, but because we never give up. Even in death, we continue to fight. The chamber was now filled with energy that hurt to look at directly. The Zentari soldiers had to shield their eyes as the light grew brighter. The quantum fields were becoming so intense that reality itself seemed to be bending around them. The seeds could only be activated by extreme trauma, Chen explained. The complete destruction of our species, the loss of our homeworld, the death of billions of our people. Your attack on Earth provided exactly the trigger that was needed. We were trying to eliminate a threat, Vexhai protested. Humans were violent and dangerous. The galaxy is safer without them. Chen's expression became sad, but her glowing eyes remained fixed on the alien commander. You made a mistake, Commander. You confused violence with the will to protect what we love. You thought that by killing our bodies you could destroy our spirits. The energy patterns in the chamber suddenly shifted. Instead of random streams, they began forming complex geometric patterns that seemed to extend into dimensions the Zentari could not see. The air itself began to vibrate with power. But consciousness is not bound by physical matter, Chen continued. When you killed our bodies, you freed our minds to join something much larger. Every human who died in your war became part of a collective consciousness that spans the entire galaxy. That is impossible, Krell said desperately. Consciousness requires a brain, a physical structure to exist. Not at the quantum level, Chen replied. The precursors learned how to store consciousness in the quantum foam that underlies all reality. They taught us to do the same thing, but only after we had suffered enough to understand the true value of life. The humans were now glowing so brightly that they seemed to be made of pure light, but their forms remained solid and recognizable. They were no longer entirely human, but they had not lost their humanity either. We have been in contact with every human consciousness that was freed by death, Chen said. Billions of minds all connected across space and time. We have been learning, growing, preparing for this moment. What moment? Vexhai asked, though he was afraid to hear the answer. Chen smiled again, and this time her expression was not entirely kind. The moment when we show the hegemony what happens to those who try to exterminate innocent species. You have awakened something that should have been left sleeping, Commander. You have triggered humanity's final weapon. The energy in the chamber reached a critical point. Reality seemed to crack around the edges as forces beyond normal physics came into play. The Zentari soldiers could feel their own consciousness being touched by something vast and alien. We are not here for revenge, Chen said as the transformation reached its climax. We are here to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else again. The galaxy needs guardians, and you have just created them. The light became so bright that everything disappeared in pure white energy. The white light faded slowly, and Commander Vexhai found himself in a place that should not exist. He was still in the chamber aboard the human ship, but now the walls seemed to stretch into infinity. The Zentari officer could see his soldiers around him, but they looked small and distant, as if viewed through the wrong end of a telescope. Captain Chen stood before him, but she was no longer entirely human. Her form shifted between solid matter and pure energy. When she spoke, her voice came from everywhere at once. Let me show you the truth, she said gently. Let me show you what your people have really done. Suddenly, Vexhai was somewhere else entirely. He stood on a beautiful world with purple skies and silver trees. Creatures that looked like living crystals moved peacefully through forests of singing plants. This was a place of incredible beauty and harmony. This was Ketra Prime, Chen's voice explained, home to the Katrani people. They were artists and musicians who had never hurt anyone. They created songs that could make flowers bloom and paintings that showed the future. Vexhai watched as hegemony ships appeared in the purple sky. He saw the orbital bombardment begin, watched as the silver forest burned and the crystal beings died screaming. He felt their terror and pain as if it were his own. The Katrani had no weapons, Chen continued. They tried to surrender, offered to share their art with the galaxy. But the hegemony marked them as different, and different meant dangerous. So they were exterminated. The scene changed. Now Vexhai stood on a water world where cities floated on the surface of vast oceans. The inhabitants were aquatic beings who had mastered biotechnology. They grew their ships instead of building them and healed diseases with living medicines. The Shalnari, Chen said. They could have cured every illness in the galaxy. They offered to heal the sick and injured among all species. But the hegemony feared their biotechnology could be used as weapons. Again, Vexhai watched the destruction. Hegemony ships poisoned the oceans and destroyed the floating cities. Millions of peaceful beings died in agony as their own healing technology was turned against them. How many species has the hegemony destroyed? Chen asked. How many civilizations have been wiped out because they were different? How many children have died because their parents refused to bow down to your empire? The visions continued, showing world after world being destroyed. Vexhai saw peaceful farmers burned from orbit, scientists executed for studying forbidden knowledge, entire species enslaved and worked to death in hegemony mines. We counted them all, Chen said sadly. Every species, every world, every individual life lost to hegemony expansion. The number is beyond counting. They were threats, Vexhai protested weakly. Different species cannot coexist peacefully. There would be chaos without the hegemony to maintain order. Is that what they told you? Chen asked. Is that how they justified the genocide? The scene changed again. Now Vexhai saw the hegemony from the outside, as if viewing it from across the galaxy. He could see the pattern of expansion, the systematic destruction of anything that did not fit their vision of order. The hegemony is not bringing peace, Chen explained. It is bringing uniformity. Every world must look the same, think the same, believe the same things. Anything unique or different is seen as a threat to be eliminated. Vexhai saw his own people, the Zentari, as they had been before joining the hegemony. They had been explorers and traders, curious about other species and eager to learn from them, but the hegemony had changed them, turned them into soldiers and enforcers. Your people were not always like this, Chen observed. They were forced to choose between joining the hegemony or being destroyed by it. Most species that survive make the same choice. What is the alternative? Vexhai asked. Without order, there would be constant war between species. Would there? Chen replied. Let me show you something else. The vision changed once more. Now Vexhai stood in space, looking down at a world he had never seen before. But this planet was different from anything the hegemony controlled. Multiple species lived together on the surface, their cities blending different architectural styles and technologies. This is Precursor Prime, Chen explained. Or rather, this is what it was like before the precursors transcended physical existence. They proved that different species can live together peacefully. Vexhai watched beings of different shapes and sizes working together. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide. Some had multiple arms, others had wings or tentacles. But they all cooperated as if they were one people. The precursors built a civilization that lasted for millions of years, Chen continued. They included every species they encountered, learned from each one, became stronger through diversity. They never forced anyone to change or conform. Then why did they transcend? Vexhai asked. If their civilization was so perfect, why did they leave? Chen's expression became sad. Because the hegemony found them. Even the precursors, with all their wisdom and technology, could not stop your people's expansion. They faced the same choice as every other species. Join the hegemony or die. The vision showed hegemony ships attacking precursor worlds. But these battles were different from the others Vexhai had seen. The precursors fought back with weapons that bent reality itself. They could turn energy into matter and matter into energy. They could manipulate time and space. The precursors were the most advanced species the galaxy had ever seen, Chen explained. But they were also peaceful. They did not want to use their power to destroy the hegemony, because that would make them just as bad as their enemies. So they found another way, Vexhai realized. Yes, they transcended physical existence, becoming beings of pure energy and consciousness. But before they left, they planted seeds throughout the galaxy. They knew that someday another species would need to take their place as guardians. The vision showed the precursors in their final days, working desperately to hide their gifts in the genetic codes of promising species. They examined thousands of different life forms looking for the right combination of traits. Most species were too aggressive or too passive, Chen explained. Some were too intelligent, others not intelligent enough. Some gave up too easily when faced with extinction. Others were so violent that they would become just another version of the hegemony. But humans were different, HFY said. Humans had the perfect balance, Chen agreed. Intelligent enough to understand the responsibility, but not so smart that they became cold and calculating. Aggressive enough to fight when necessary, but peaceful enough to value life. Most importantly, humans never give up hope, even in the darkest moments. The vision showed early humans on Earth long before they developed space travel. The precursors had visited the planet secretly, making tiny changes to human DNA. The modifications were so subtle that even advanced scanners could not detect them. The seeds were designed to activate only under specific conditions, Chen explained. The host species had to face complete extinction at the hands of the hegemony. Only that level of trauma could trigger the quantum consciousness transfer. So you planned this, HFY accused. You wanted us to attack Earth. No, Chen replied firmly. We had no idea the seeds even existed until after our deaths. The precursors made sure that no species could activate the transformation deliberately. It had to be genuine trauma, real extinction, or the process would not work. The vision showed the final battle for Earth in new detail. As human cities burned and ships died in space, something deep in human DNA began to activate. The quantum seeds absorbed the consciousness of every dying human, storing them in the quantum foam that underlies reality. Billions of human minds were preserved in the moment of death, Chen explained. But we were not truly dead. We were transformed, freed from the limitations of physical matter. We became part of something larger. HFY saw the truth now. The human ship Defiance had not been drifting dead in space. It had been a beacon, broadcasting on quantum frequencies that normal instruments could not detect. Every human consciousness in the galaxy had been connected through that ship. We have been learning, Chen said, studying the hegemony from the inside, understanding how your empire works. We have been preparing for the day when we would reveal ourselves. And that day is today, HFY realized. Yes, Chen replied. Your boarding party activated our proximity sensors. The quantum transmission has begun. Every hegemony ship in the galaxy is receiving our signal. The vision faded, and HFY found himself back in the chamber aboard the Defiance. But now he could feel something vast and powerful awakening throughout the galaxy. Billions of human consciousnesses were stirring, preparing to act as one. Across the galaxy, every hegemony ship received the same message at exactly the same moment. Communication officers on thousands of vessels looked at their screens in confusion as text appeared in perfect ancient Zentari, the formal language used only for the most important announcements. Your reckoning has come, Admiral. Korthval was reviewing patrol reports on his flagship when his communications officer reported the strange message. The old Zentari commander had conquered dozens of worlds for the hegemony. He had never seen anything like this. Where did this transmission come from? He demanded. Unknown, sir, the officer replied nervously. It appeared on all channels simultaneously. Our computers cannot trace the source. Similar scenes were playing out on every hegemony ship. Battle cruisers, cargo vessels, scout ships, even the massive dreadnoughts that protected the core worlds, all received the same message. Then the real nightmare began. On the bridge of Admiral Korthval's flagship, the air began to shimmer. Shapes appeared out of nothing. Human shapes, but made of light and energy instead of flesh and blood. They were the consciousnesses of humans who had died in the war, now given form by quantum technology beyond hegemony understanding. Greetings, Admiral, said the figure that had once been Colonel Marcus Thompson of the Earth Defense Force. He had died when his ship was destroyed over Mars, but now he stood on the bridge of his enemy's vessel. We have come to discuss your crimes. Korthval drew his sidearm and fired at the human figure. The plasma bolt passed harmlessly through Thompson and scorched the wall behind him. The human smiled sadly. Violence will not save you this time, Thompson said. We exist beyond your ability to harm us. All across the bridge, more human consciousnesses appeared. They were men and women of all ages, soldiers and civilians who had died defending Earth and the colonies. Some wore military uniforms, others simple clothes. All of them glowed with the same blue light. This is impossible, Korthval protested. The humans are extinct. We destroyed them completely. You destroyed our bodies, agreed Thompson. But consciousness is not so easily erased. We have learned to exist in forms you cannot imagine. The same thing was happening on every hegemony ship throughout the galaxy. Millions of human consciousnesses appeared simultaneously, speaking to their enemies in calm, patient voices. They did not threaten or attack. They simply stood there, waiting. On a hegemony mining station orbiting a gas giant, the alien workers stopped their labor as human figures appeared among them. These were the spirits of colonists who had died when their worlds were burned. Farmers and teachers and children who had committed no crime except existing. "We are not here for revenge," one of the spirits told the frightened alien miners. "We are here to offer you a choice." The mining station's commander tried to activate the security systems, but the controls would not respond. Throughout the facility, hegemony technology was beginning to malfunction as quantum fields interfered with normal electronics. In the hegemony capital system, the ruling council was meeting in emergency session. The great chamber where they made decisions was filled with the most powerful beings in their empire, but now human consciousnesses stood among them, observing their panic with calm eyes. "How are you doing this?" demanded Supreme Leader Vorthak, the ancient being who ruled the entire hegemony. "Our shields should prevent any intrusion. Your shields protect against physical threats," explained the spirit of Dr. Sarah Kim, who had been killed when the hegemony bombed the research station on Titan. "But consciousness exists in quantum dimensions that your technology cannot reach." Vorthak had lived for over 1,000 years and conquered half the galaxy. He had never been afraid of anything before, but now he felt terror creeping into his heart as he realized that all his power meant nothing against these beings. "What do you want?" he asked. "Justice," Dr. Kim replied simply, "and to ensure that what happened to us never happens to anyone else." The quantum field that connected all human consciousnesses was growing stronger by the moment. On the Defiance, Captain Chen and her crew were coordinating the galaxy-wide awakening. The ship had become a transmission hub, amplifying human will into reality-altering force. "It is time," Chen announced to her crew. "Begin the transformation." Throughout the galaxy, the human consciousnesses started to change their approach. Instead of simply appearing on hegemony ships, they began to interact with the technology itself. Computer systems that had worked perfectly for thousands of years suddenly developed new programs that no one had written. On Admiral Korthval's flagship, the weapon system shut down completely. The engines stopped responding to commands. Life support continued to function, but everything else went dark. The ship was effectively helpless. "What have you done to my ship?" Korthval demanded. "We have given it a conscience," Thompson replied. "Your technology will no longer serve the cause of genocide." Similar transformations were happening everywhere. Hegemony weapons could no longer fire on civilian targets. Transport ships could not carry soldiers to new conquests. Communication systems began broadcasting messages of peace instead of military orders. But the humans offered more than just punishment. On worlds where enslaved species toiled in hegemony mines and factories, human consciousnesses appeared to the prisoners. "You are free," they announced. "Your chains are broken." The quantum fields that the humans controlled reached into every computer system, every security device, every control mechanism that kept the slaves in bondage. Doors opened, energy barriers failed, and millions of enslaved beings walked free for the first time in generations. The Katrani survivors, hidden on reservation worlds, felt their artistic abilities returning as human spirits shared precursor knowledge with them. The few remaining Shalnari found their biotechnology enhanced beyond their wildest dreams. Every species that had been oppressed by the hegemony discovered new hope. "This is chaos," Vorthak protested as reports flooded in from across his empire. "Without order, the galaxy will tear itself apart." "Will it?" asked Dr. Kim. "Or will it finally have a chance to grow and flourish without fear?" The human consciousnesses were not interested in ruling the galaxy themselves. Instead, they began teaching other species the secrets of cooperation and peaceful coexistence. They shared precursor technology that could provide unlimited clean energy and eliminate scarcity. On Earth, something miraculous was happening. The burned atmosphere was clearing as quantum forces repaired the damage. Dead oceans began to flow again. The human consciousnesses were rebuilding their homeworld, not for themselves, but as a symbol of renewal. "You have a choice," Dr. Kim told the hegemony leaders. "You can continue to resist and watch your empire crumble around you, or you can learn to live peacefully with other species." Some hegemony commanders tried to fight back. They ordered their remaining loyal ships to attack the human vessels, but their weapons simply would not fire. The quantum fields that surrounded every human consciousness protected them from all forms of physical attack. Others tried to evacuate to distant systems, hoping to escape the human influence. But the consciousnesses followed them everywhere, appearing instantly across any distance. There was nowhere in the galaxy that was beyond their reach. Gradually, the fighting stopped. Hegemony soldiers laid down their weapons and asked what they should do now. Many of them had been born into the military and had never known any other life. Learn, the human spirits told them. Discover what your people were like before they joined the hegemony. Find your own path to peace. The transformation of the galaxy took months, but it was gentle and patient. The human consciousnesses did not force anyone to change. They simply made it impossible for violence and oppression to continue. Those who chose peace found help and guidance. Those who insisted on violence found their weapons useless. On the Defiance, Captain Chen stood at her command station and watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. Billions of people were free for the first time in their lives. Species that had been enemies for centuries were learning to cooperate. "It is done," she said to her crew. "The galaxy is finally safe." The ship began to glow more brightly as the quantum transformation reached its completion. The Defiance was becoming something new, not just a vessel, but a beacon of hope that could be seen from any point in the galaxy. Commander Vexhai and his boarding party watched in amazement as the human ship transformed around them. They were not prisoners or victims. They were witnesses to the birth of a new age. "What happens to us now?" Vexhai asked. Chen smiled at him with genuine kindness. "You go home," she said. "You tell your people what you have seen here. You help them learn to live without conquest and violence. And if we refuse, then you will discover that the universe is much larger and stranger than you ever imagined," Chen replied. "But we hope you will choose the better path." The Defiance completed its transformation, becoming a nexus of light that connected every consciousness in the galaxy. It was no longer just a ship, but a symbol of what could be achieved when different species worked together instead of fighting. Earth bloomed with new life as quantum technology restored its biosphere. The other worlds that had been destroyed by the hegemony began to heal as well.